we ready? Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting for December 1st, 2025. I will now call the meeting to order at 1 p.m. I am looking for any added items to our agenda today. Any from administration or council? Seeing none, then I would look for consensus of the agenda for today. Thank you all. That's carried unanimously. We will now move along to the previous minutes from the Committee of the Whole meeting from October 6, 2025. Did anyone see any errors or omissions? Any changes? Seeing none, then I will ask again for consensus to adopt the previous minutes. Thank you all. That is passed unanimously. We will now move along to item number 3, presentations and delegations, and it would be page 5, item 3A, Protective Services Quarterly Report, and I'll turn it over to you, Sayle Williams, for introduction as to who's presenting today.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Blatz, and today Director Andrews with us to lead us through the Q3 Protective Services Report. Over to you, Justin.
Good afternoon. We'll start with the quarterly report for Protective Services. This is the first slide is for the fire department specifically. Excuse me. In the third quarter, numbers were fairly consistent and in line with most other periods of time, depending on the circumstance and the weather, which always plays a factor in things that we do. But keeping in mind that this was the summertime period, which typically we do see a downturn in our emergency responses, July and August in particular. The year-to-date statistics for the third quarter were in line with kind of previous years, although I'd love to tell you that's a very similar story for when you get the fourth quarter report, because we've essentially doubled the call volume from the period reported at the end of the third to today. So it's been a busy portion in the last part of the year. Shoot time goal, which is part of our KPIs that we have, is the division is less than 9 minutes 90% of the time with an effective response, and so it's in 28 was a time, which is a pretty that is a pain on call if I get that time from someone who calls 911 to the time that we have a fully staffed truck running out the door when people are coming from home or work or whatever, is that's pretty good. So we're super happy with that number. Next one, that was for the urban responses, I'm sorry, and this one is for our rural. So again, similar numbers in line with previous quarters. Again, not a whole lot of activity. The fire responses that would be listed, there were a few periods there of a very dry summer that the county had a fire ban or fire restriction in place for the majority of the summer, and so numbers were pretty low for that. And when we start looking at our provincial highway calls, so these would be motor vehicle collisions, again, the numbers were fairly consistent for the traffic that we would see out on Highway 2 at any given time. The mutual aid aspect of these motor vehicle collision, that's how we would report a response outside of our normal response area. So there are times that we would respond into Red Deer County or into different areas of jurisdiction, such as the Sundre area, Didsbury, etc. So that's just how that's broken down, is that it's out of our normal response area. The next slide is our retention and recruitment, talking about another KPI. And so right now in our rank and roster, we have 4 probationary firefighters that had graduated recruit training in June, 29 active firefighters, our officer corps of qualified for officers, lieutenants, and captains. So we're sitting at an operational number of 42 firefighters in total of authorized strength of, which will again lead into recruitment effort for the beginning of 2026. Training hours in Q3 were 748 man hours of training time for a total of 4238. And in comparison, we were up slightly from 2024, and that was because we were doing a certified credential course in this quarter for the majority of our probationary and or fire cadets. So that was a strong number. Some of the highlights, the public education sessions. So we were out with different schools doing field trips and activities with the engagement of the school. The end of the June, we always do, we go around and spray the kids off in the last week of school, which has become a big hit, getting blasted with a fire hose. We've done some proactive fire extinguisher training sessions with different entities such as ProAll, Olds College, and accredited supports to the community, where we have our fire extinguishing training device that we bring people in and allow them to use a real life fire extinguisher on a simulated fire. And it's valuable for their workplace, meets their occupational health and safety requirements in training. And again, I mentioned some of the engagement sessions. The big ones that were huge this year were the foam party in the park there in the summer. Canada Day is always a big one, fireworks and things like that. And again, working with the Terry Fox Run. Moving on to municipal enforcement, looking again at some of the demographics and some of the different areas that we cover. Again, relatively standard across the board. A lot of extra time spent dealing with specifically community standards type complaints such as unsightlies. And again, it all depends on the time of year. Again, through the summer, we shift to a lot of proactive work because people aren't around per se as much. So that gives the officers the time to go and drive the back alleys and look at the places that haven't been visualized or haven't been complained about. Number of citations issued, again, it varies based on the time. The one thing that isn't captured in complete terms with these numbers is that the RCMP are issuing municipal tags as well, and I don't have their statistics on that. So those numbers look a little bit light, but they are actually bolstered with the opportunity for the RCMP to use our system to gain compliance with people as well. Again, the highlights, Emmy participated in various community sessions throughout town at different times. Again, same thing with Canada Day and different community events. There were several traffic safety initiatives coordinated with the RCMP, doing targeted enforcement on Highway 27, 2A, in the school zones. And the big piece is looking to not only ensure compliance, but to increase awareness and education on things such as rolling stops, speeding in school, playground zones, and general courtesy to other motorists. Proactive activities was the unsightly work that was done through the community this summer on mostly grass vegetation, some properties with cleanups of various debris and other materials that accumulate in yards. We had a fairly successful Oldstoberfest this year on an enforcement level as a general, so there were very few instances of unruly conduct in the downtown, and there was no reported damage or vandalism that came across our desk through the RCMP or through municipal enforcement, which is huge. In some previous years, there was substantial amounts of damage done in Centennial Park and in the downtown core, so that's a win. Moving next to emergency management, fairly quiet period. Again, summertime, not a lot happening, which is a good thing. It's always the fear for us is that's one of the risk factors is tornado activity or severe storms, and we didn't have any of those. We did have some expanded opportunities for some of our members to get involved and start engaging with more training and specific in community outreach and education support. So one of our members of the fire department, Brandon Thompson, was assigned to expand the community preparedness and school programming Brandon's background is that he's actually a City of Calgary police officer, and so he does community outreach for them, and so he wanted to utilize some of his skills for us in this capacity, which is a great addition to our team. The one big thing that we've been pushing hard and try to continue to get usership subscriber levels increased is with Voyant Alert. It's a third-party application software that allows for community notifications for urgent notices, such as the time of an emergency. People have to sign up to receive these notifications, but we can give them live updates. We can give specific information regarding the incident, whether it's an emergency or a water line break or repair, snow clearing. And this is the mechanism that we want to push forward for the town going forward with our notifications. What it looks like is that Voyant Alert would be the platform that would send out the information, and then the same information on Voyant would actually be tagged onto the social media such as Facebook or Instagram or other things, instead of trying to do individual messages through each one of those platforms having to be redesigned and done. Excuse me. So the big piece is for us is just getting people to sign up. So we've been advertising it in all town communications, whether it's the newsletters, the utility bills on the online. Ultimately, you have to sign into this to get it, and so that's our big push, is to continue to get more residents signed up. And then our college partnership, we have been working with them on emergency management initiatives, making sure that we're both talking together about the same common language, same situations. Essentially, the college is a community within a community, so a lot of the threats that we would face in a disaster services speak would be very similar to them. So there's been lots of good conversation, and there continues to be a partnership with the college staff with emergency preparedness. Looking forward to quarter four, the phased completion of the fire training facility. I can speak that we'll hopefully have it finished, but just before the snow hit, all of the cans were put in place, so that's great that we beat the weather for once. Again, we're preparing for recruitment for first quarter of 2026. Municipal enforcement, this changes now with the weather and the snow, so from the proactive work on unsightlies, now we'll be looking on focused compliance on snow removal, shoveling sidewalks and things like that. And there is still work that can be done for unsightly properties through the winter months, and again, continued traffic safety. Emergency management, this week you'll get to partake in the Alberta Emergency Management Association mandated training for elected officials, and we are preparing to do a regional wildfire tabletop exercise in 2026, where this is specifically for Mountain View County, where essentially a scenario will be designed where in the West Country that there would be a proposed wildfire event, and how would that impact Mountain View County and the municipalities within, kind of on a smaller scale, more focused. So I think it'll be a really valuable lesson for everybody. And with that, that's the end of my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Director Andrew. Looking to council for questions. Council Overwater.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Blatz. I just wanted to send out a kudos to Constable White for going and knocking on doors for the snow event that we had. And, you know, for him to take the time to go and knock on the residents in Uptown Olds to move their vehicles, since there is a tow ban when this happens. So I just wanted to send out a kudos to him.
Thank you. I'll pass it along. You know, typically when we talk about snow removal events, the first one in the year is always the one that causes the most amount of grief, just simply people remembering. So this year we did spend 2 hours of proactive time before the ticketing and towing occurred for the snow removal, where it was physically knocking on doors and contacting people, trying to get people to move, and was quite successful. So hopefully the next time it'll be easy and there'll be very few.
Mayor Daley and then Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Blatz. I just want clarification on slides on page 7 and 8 under the responses other. What would that entail, the others? Because it is quite a few, like that's your highest numbers in both columns, right? So is that getting the cats out of the storm sewer, or is that something other than community work?
Yeah, very good. It is exactly that. It's everything that doesn't have a very specific defined response. So whether it's public service, we'll get calls through 911 from people that maybe their smoke alarm is acting funny and they might think that it's an emergency, but it's not. It might be dead batteries or malfunctioning, or getting calls to rescue animals out of vehicles. We get lots of calls that people are concerned that they think a dog or a cat is in a vehicle and the conditions are unsafe. So that would be where it would fall into those categories. So from everything from, we have a list of, I think there's 150 different call types that we'd take. So we take a very small, narrow snapshot. This is fire, this is medical, these are car accidents, and then everything else is mixed up there.
Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through you to the Director and possibly jointly to the CAO. On pages, I think it's 7 and 8, you talk about the medical responses, rural and urban. Can you just talk a little bit about what's behind those numbers? I know last year we had about 99 total responses. This year to date, we're at 67. Is that a bit of a red thread that is emerged or has emerged? I know we had the AB Munis rep out here in the summertime, and it was talked about possibly getting AB Munis to advocate around ambulance service and availability. I guess I'm just wondering, what is the cost on a per call-out? I'm sure there's a variability, but behind that cost, what does it mean for us as a municipality in terms of ambulance availability, redirecting fire department personnel? And how do we get ahead of this if it is becoming an issue? Thanks.
Yeah, so really valid questions pertaining to medical response. So the first piece is that any kind of a medical response that we initiate is essentially at the direction of the municipality. So Alberta Health Services does not dictate that you have to provide any kind of a medical response to EMS-related events in the community. It's completely your own jurisdiction's decision. And so we have a matrix that we follow, and it's a response protocol that we essentially have gone through and decided which types of medical response calls that we would actually go to as the fire department. And this is a document that's constantly being refined and modified based on how these numbers kind of come out. And ultimately where we're looking to respond is only when we're actually needed. And the reality is that we could tweak very few things in that matrix, and you could see our annual call totals go to over 1,000 calls a year if I literally flipped a couple of switches. And we don't want to do that, nor do we need to do that. Simply, it would be a waste of time and resources. And so we've refined this list over the last few years down that we feel that we've got it fairly dialed in, that we are only responding to the calls that actually there is benefit to the fire department coming. And so without going into huge detail, it's when an ambulance is greater than 20 minutes away, and when it's a severe life implication. So breathing or heart problems would be a couple of the main ones. The other piece of the medical response is that we will be requested for assistance for, they call it a lift assist, and that's where somebody needs to be removed from a home or a location, and it takes more than the 2 attendants that come with the ambulance. So we'll come to help aid with removal of people from homes and tight spaces, if you will. As far as a cost per call, it is a variable number because based on the type of situation that we're responding to, the number of our members that show up to the call and so on and so forth. But we'd be looking in that range of, kind of $150 to $200 per call, if I had to put a number on it. As far as the advocacy piece that you were speaking of, as far as AHS or the government paying, so Alberta Health Services does have a program in place where they do provide grant money to municipalities that participate in their medical first response program, which we are partners of. And so in 2025, we received approximately $11,000 from AHS in this grant. And we applied that to medical supplies and equipment and as well medical training for our members. So they're essentially covering the cost for any of our firefighters to become, to be certified in advanced first aid and, all of those pieces. And they pay for our supplies that we use on these medical calls. So does it cover all the costs? No. Is it better than zero? Yes. And as far as the advocacy piece, I mean, we can always continue to advocate to the government to pay, but it's been a pretty solid answer for several years. This conversation's come up is that it's ultimately you deciding, because if you as council decided tomorrow that we shouldn't respond to medical calls, we would literally flip the switch off and that's the end of the cost. And again, the whole premise is that we're trying to maximize our effect, that we're only going when we're needed as opposed to, trying to fill time and build business cases for more people and more time and more money. But it is universal. There's lots of communities struggling. EMS, unfortunately, inevitably in a community is one of the highest impact calls that most fire departments face in Alberta. And it's literally because there's a lack of resources and that's just the reality. The fire department is a constant, that we're here all the time. We don't get called to go to different communities for, like the ambulances do. So we're always here 24/7. So we're kind of that insurance fail safe to make sure that citizens are getting that care.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Blatz, and through to Director Andrew. The shoot time, 8 minutes 28 seconds. Somebody who doesn't know what's going on with that shoot time, would you be able to kind of walk me by a bit of a timeline as what's happening? Perhaps give me an appreciation for just how quick that is and what kind of value we're all getting from this quick response. Thanks.
Yeah, very good. The reality is, so when somebody calls 911, your call is answered at the call center in Red Deer, and they identify where you're calling from, what the nature of your emergency is, and they get some key information from you prior to ever dispatching any resource. So they need to know, is your house on fire? Are you in a car accident? Whatever. And so they'll ask those key questions. And then simultaneously behind the scenes, somebody's still talking to you, getting more information. Another dispatcher will then alert the fire department. So they give those key pieces of information out saying, you have a call of this nature at this location. And so that gets us mobilized. At that time, through an application on our phones, the firefighters are summoned, and as well as pagers and radios, notified there's a call. And at that point, that's when they start to respond from home, work, wherever. So middle of the night, you're in bed, you got to get dressed, you got to start your vehicle, you might have to scrape the windshield to get the frost off of it. Maybe you're dealing with traffic lights. Nobody's above the law, so all of our members have to follow all the rules of the road when responding. Depending on where you are in town, you get to the fire station, you got to get there, you get your gear on, get equipped, get in the right trucks, fire them up, and figure out where you're going and start responding. So in 8 minutes and 28 seconds to have not just one person show up and respond out, we're talking 4 is a minimum effective response. So 4 firefighters, and that has to be somebody that's an accredited driver operator of that apparatus and an officer, so somebody that's going to supervise. So it's not just the first random 4 people that show up, it's actually specific people. To put that into perspective, in a full-time career fire department that has paid firefighters living at the hall 24/7, you see shoot times of 90 seconds, 90 to 120 seconds is kind of an average shoot time. So considering that that's a resource that's there in the hall and we're only, several minutes longer than that coming from home, I hope that does put it into perspective about how fast this service really is.
Yeah, that does sound truly extraordinary. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other further questions from council? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just more on the PSA side. I just want to confirm through the Protective Services Municipal Enforcement. So the Fill the Boot campaign, I think, is coming up, correct?
Wednesday, 11 o'clock till
Okay.
4.
Perfect. So I just want to confirm, is the requirement still the same for first-time sitting councilors? It's a minimum $200 donation, correct? Or has that changed higher?
I'm going to put that one onto the CAO.
It still stands correct, yes.
Thank you. I do have one question for you, Director Andrew. On page 14, where we have the college partnership and then the acronym OCERT, do you want to give anybody who might be listening what that acronym stands for? I can probably guess, but I don't want to be misinforming someone what I think it is and what it actually is.
Okay, well, that's two of us. I'm 99% sure it's Olds College Emergency Response Team, but I could be completely wrong on that. So if I am, then I apologize. But essentially, it's their group of people within their staff that focus on the emergency planning and management.
Okay, I assumed that, but we all know what happens when you assume something. All right, so are there any further questions for Director Andrew? Seeing none, then, could I have a motion to accept his recorded report for information? Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I make the motion that council accept as presented the report from Director of Protective Services. Does that do it? Mumbled?
Thank you. All in favor? That motion is carried unanimously. Thank you so much. We will now move along to business, page 16, item 4A, Rates Policy 233C, and C.O. Williams, will you introduce, please, who will be presenting this policy?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor, and Director Lapointe's with us to go over the policy amendment.
Thank you very much. Today, administration is presenting the Rates Policy 233C for your review and discussion. The current policy outlines rates for the Sportsplex, Aquatic Center, sports fields, public transportation, community development, and cemetery. To develop our recommendations, administration reviewed our existing rate structures and analyzed our comparator municipalities. And for consistency's sake, we use the same comparator communities as in other departmental reviews. So that would be Blackfalds, Edson, Morinville, Innisfail, Coaldale, Drayton Valley, and Tabor. After compiling this information, we shifted from averaging the comparison rates to using the median. This approach prevents extreme values from skewing results, supports competitiveness, and provides a more reliable benchmark. We then reviewed our internal rate structure to identify adjustments that would strengthen revenue generation, and any unused rates were removed to simplify the structure. At the Sportsplex, most rates remained unchanged as they were already at or above the median. Where increases were recommended, current usage levels were used to determine the impact of the proposed change. Of note, we are also proposing a decrease to dry pad local rates as ours were significantly higher than the median. The goal is to align these rates with other regional facilities, improve competitiveness, and encourage more use of the space over the summer months. And just a friendly reminder to council that the usage will probably dip this year due to the planned month-long closure for the electrical upgrade in June. For the sports fields, we are recommending a major update, moving away from the tiered structure based on class. The new structure reflects actual usage and distinguishes only between Rotary Park and all the other fields. The updated list is competitive, easy to understand, and positions us to attract more users both locally and from outside the community. Financial risk of this change is minimal as sports field revenue remains limited relative to operating costs. And while the lower fees increase, the highest local rates have been reduced to balance the structure. Our analysis shows only minimal impact on local minor field sports groups based on current usage, while improving our ability to draw additional users. And one final note on the policy itself. The previous version attached all rate schedules directly to the policy. To simplify that process, we are recommending that the rates be removed from the policy, that the policy itself be reviewed once per council term, and that the rate schedules return annually for council's review as outlined in the revised policy. With that, I'm open to any questions you may have.
Thank you, Director Lapointe. And Councillor Overwater?
Thank you. Oops. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Blatz. Am I seeing what the old charges are? Are they on here compared to what the new charge? Am I missing something here? Am I seeing what the new charge is?
The old charges should be in the schedule for the, in the policy.
Am I looking at it somewhere in here? Sorry if I'm blind.
Yeah, it should just follow as the Schedule A, B, C, D as part of the policy. Oh, if you're looking for an actual comparison,
Yeah.
again, we didn't put them side by side. There's,
Okay.
they're in the policy and then the recommended changes. My apologies.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Director Lapointe? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through you to the director. So a couple days ago, we saw the divisional presentation around the KPIs and so on. I'm just wondering with how this rate policy, and I realize we review it every year, but you talked about and the comparators targeting median, or we're at median, and we've softened some rates and increased others. Just wondering overall how this aligns with moving towards our targets around user fees, I guess, as a percentage of revenue and recovery of operating costs. Are we basically saying we're there then at our targeted rates for those categories, or this is an evolving process over years? Thanks.
I guess it depends on which amenity you're looking at. I mean, when you're looking at the sports fields, I'd say there's significant change that can be had there. The goal there is to improve utilization. And again, we're looking for quantity at this point, is the idea. Let's bring some people in through the doors. The upper tier of that structure was virtually unutilized. So simplifying that process for us at this point and hopefully attracting others into the community will be helpful. In terms of some of the other facilities, the aquatic center and the sportsplex, pretty competitive at this point. There's just some minor changes that needed to be made. And I would say that it's more about a promotional, we need to look at promoting the facilities to bring those people in through the doors, but there's still some capacity there to bring people in.
CEO Williams.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through you, just to add on to what Director Lapointe said. So the idea of facility utilization, revenue generation, and then what we're calling event tourism, bringing external users and activities of tournaments to Olds. There's multiple facets to that. I would argue that rates is but a small piece of that. And if you look at the previous schedule as well from last year, the Aquatic Center and Sportsplex are fairly comparable in terms of their changes being made this year, whereas the Rotary Park and sports fields are the major changes. Based on our research, this demand is very elastic, where the users do shop around much more than your local user groups do. So that is strategic in that way. But I think as 2026 progresses, Council will see at various times some other ideas coming forward to meet that goal of both 30% cost recovery through user fees is what's in the corporate plan, as well as with the more loose goal of promoting event tourism, attracting tournaments here, whether it be hockey, soccer, softball, etc. That goes into advertising and marketing. It goes into special promotional rates. It goes into partnerships and all of that good stuff, and spans more than just Director Lapointe's department. One issue I guess we're going to find right away with our local demand, which already evident, our facilities aren't at near capacity, including the sportsplex. People believe that just because they can't book ice at 5 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon, that we need a third ice surface in town. That's simply not true. If people just adjust their preferences slightly, an hour forward or backward, you will find 35% utilization at a facility that's today's dollars, $80 million to build. That's a pretty low number. So I think along with that event tourism and chasing that cost recovery, we have to look at just increasing the domestic usership as well before we explore what's missing from a recreation arsenal as well. But a long way of saying that I think we're trying something with the sports field side, and with all other adjustments we think were needed with the field. Something administration is focused on quite a bit is trying to both increase that revenue, but I would say more importantly, attract those external users to Olds and the economic benefit that slow pitch or soccer tournaments or whatever else brings.
Thank you, CEO Williams. Are there any further questions of Director Lapointe? Okay, seeing none then. On page 16, we have the committee direction recommendation. Mayor Daley, would you like to make that, please?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Blatz. I move that the committee accept the rates policy 233C as recommended and instruct the Chief Administrative Officer to present this at a future council meeting for final review and approval.
Thank you. I'm asked the question then. All those in favor? Thank you very much. That is carried unanimously. And thank you, Director Lapointe, for your presentation. We will now move along to page 28 under Business 4B, the 2025 election wrap-up report. And CO Williams, I will turn it over to you again for introduction of who's presenting this information to council.
Thank you again, Deputy Mayor. And I'm pretty sure the legislative clerk's going to present this. We didn't chat about this prior to the meeting, so yeah, perfect. Then Marcy, take it away.
Thank you. And through the chair, thank you for the opportunity to provide this election wrap-up. And if you can believe, it's been 6 weeks today since the election. And I get to destroy the election materials. Woo woo. In this report, do you want me to next slide? I'm going to touch on some 2025 stats, historical stats, financial breakdown, and the legislative compliance. Next slide. On this slide here, you'll see the stats from this year's election. The advanced polls were down pretty much half. In 2021, we had about 1,100 people. On election day in 2021, we had 1,200, so about 150 more. And a great turnout for our institutional votes, where we had 52 people vote. Historically, we've been lucky to hit 25. And I give that credit to the location staff because they really riled the troops up and got them to where we needed them to vote. And our next page has our stats on there for the last couple of elections. And I would say that Olds is pretty average for their turnout. I feel that the 2021 was a greater turnout because of COVID and that there was a referendum vote in regards to daylight savings time. That's probably why we were a little higher that year. And every year, every election year, it's for one mayor and for 6 council. And as you know, we had 2 for mayor and 15 this year. So it was a lot. Next slide, please. Now with this budget slide, for personnel and wages and salaries, that is staff. For election worker, those are the citizens that I hired. And the supplies and equipment include everything from ballots to Form 13 printing, the facility rental, food so my workers weren't hangry, election supplies, etc. My budget for the election was 27,500, sorry, 27 even, and I spent 26,158 on that. And council has an orientation budget of 10,500, and we've spent about 2,500 of that, leaving that 8,800 variance, which is 8,000 for council orientation and about 800 for any bills left to come in. A postal strike did affect some of my deliveries of supplies, and we used technology and software were all in-house. We didn't have to purchase anything, so we were lucky that way. And over the next couple of slides, I'm going to touch on these 3 topics, staffing and the new requirements and voting opportunities. With staffing, I used 28 people to run this election. In 2021, I used 9. To me, that's a big difference, and it was mostly, we knew it would take longer registering people, and we knew we had to hand count, which is something we've never done over 25 years in this town. And that's that slide. Regarding the permanent electors registry, we didn't have any technical or software failures or issues. A couple of errors that might have been made is my staff not striking out a person or something, and then we just went back and tried to figure it out. We don't feel anything was critical, and we have a deadline of mid-January to update that list. So if you weren't on the list or there was a change, you had to fill in the Form 13, and with those Form 13s, we then have to update this list and send it back to Elections Alberta by the middle of January. And I think I have about 100 left to go out of about 400, and won't be any problem meeting that deadline. The counting of ballots, this was my biggest challenge or my biggest stressor for this election. I would say that my Clerks Association, we met this challenge head on, and if it wasn't for them and our bigger municipality brothers and sisters doing a lot of the legwork for us where they counted and did tests and what kind of ballots and things like that and shared that information, it helped us determine that there was no way we were going to do it the way that they were doing it, and these were some of the suggestions, and this grass skirt counting method is something we happened upon. And if you haven't seen it, there's a great 3-minute YouTube video you can go and watch. But I feel that it was the biggest time saver for us. And we only counted council ballots with it because the mayor was relatively easy because there was 2 candidates. So it was either Dan's pile or Michael Mazitchka's pile. We counted until about 1:30 a.m. We verified everything, and then I think we sent it out about 1:45 in the morning. I think we gave a lot of voting opportunities. We had our advanced poll days where we covered morning, evening, and weekends. We had 1 central location, and we had 2 mobile election teams that hit our institutional sites or seniors' homes, Seasons Old, Seasons Encore, and Mount View Lodge. Again, very happy with the turnout from there. And I can't say enough about our workers who kept everything going smoothly. And I think I've noted here, we've heard maybe 10 minutes waiting, which I don't think is bad at all, considering they had to fill in a form potentially, wait for us to check it, and then they had to pick 6 names out of 15, which a lot of people came in with lists. Again, what we heard with the fact that there was 15 names is that citizens didn't really have access to you. And so to maybe rectify that in the next election, we would look to collaborate more with the chamber or take it over ourselves. We would have to look at a different way to get the candidate information out there. Again, trying to remain neutral because we don't want to show any bias or anything like that. So, which is probably historically why the town has stayed away from it. So I think going forward, it'll be a new world for us. And I think any extra work that we do complete will come at a cost, for sure. I would look to you guys to ask, how do you feel the election went? Let me know via an email. If there's anything good, bad, or ugly that we could change, we'll take any feedback that you guys wish to provide. Would love to hear from you. In our next slide, Sean and Carolyn and I, which I can't say enough about the help that I got from them to run this election, plus the election workers. We did have a debrief, and we've come up with about 8 to 10 simple little recommendations. Timing. I use the name Jean's Place, and a lot of people knew it as the Community Connection Center. So just little things like that. Nothing major that we felt would cause us any issues. And we have sent out an election survey, an election worker survey, of which I've got about 17 out of 28 replies back. And most of them are saying great experience, would do it again, training was good, went smoothly. And I laughed when I read this one. One of our workers said the challenge was slow periods. So I was like, okay, I'll take that. No problem whatsoever. The last couple of tasks that we have to finish, as I've mentioned, were the permanent electors registry, where I have to take the information that was different and send it back. And then the big one is the candidate expense form, Form 26. I have received 5 out of the 17 of those so far. The few I have received are redacted, and they are on the website under the election page, should you want to go look at them. I will be sending out an email to all of the people who haven't sent them in January and February, because it does go till the end of this year, and that will be their only reminders, and I hope everyone completes it. And the only paper, and as I mentioned earlier, today's the day I can destroy all of the election materials, which are ballots, counting sheets, all of the Form 13s and all of the lists we had. And the only paperwork I keep is candidate paperwork. So your Form 4, your Form 5, and your Form 26 until the end of the term, and then it would be destroyed, just so everybody knows. And I think on the next slide, I've listed our greatest success and the biggest challenge I felt. And again, I can't say it enough, if it wasn't for the exceptional performance of the election team, that I don't think it would have been as smooth. I think we had great staff working. Back to the biggest challenge was the counting, because I was stressed out because we had never done it ever in my lifetime, 25 years. I know I'm young. And then pretty much the last slide is future considerations or improvements. Trying to figure out how to boost the turnout. Not sure what that would look like. Getting more information to the candidates. Again, that will be stuff we'll work on going forward, so ideas are appreciated. The advocacy piece for council would be to put pressure on the province to bring back tabulators. Because, 1:45 is a lot different than 8:30 or 8:45. 45 minutes after the election, we usually had the results out. We're packed up and back here. All the media's had their information. Stress level would be a lot better, but I'm not sure they factor that in. Again, direction and feedback is always welcome. And I'm very proud to say that I think the election was conducted efficiently and transparently and was in full compliance with all of the relevant legislation, and that we successfully integrated all the new procedure requirements as we were supposed to. And that's pretty much my report, and I thank you for listening, and I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Marcy. You are returning officers, and also you are legislative coordinator. Clerk. Okay. I never get that title correct.
It's all good.
Okay, so I'll open it up for questions or comments. Councillor Overwater.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Blatz. And to you, Legislative Clerk McKinnon, the only thing I heard was at the forum, everybody really wished it could have been videoed at the end of the day. Like more people really wanted that. That was the only thing I heard that was a negative. There was a great turnout. People thought that there was a great turnout at the forum, but that was the only thing. And for whatever reason, I don't know why it wasn't, or it was maybe not thought of. I don't know. But anyway, that was the only thing I heard.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Taylor and then Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Blatz, and through to Returning Officer Marcy Buchanan. The grass skirts, yeah, a huge success with that. I know it looks a little bit cumbersome at first, but what a huge benefit. So this is just more of a comment and praise for going for that route. Really great. If nobody listening hasn't seen it, I'd encourage you to, as it involves its own checksum of sorts. So you're counting not only votes, but also unused votes. So no errors propagate past that sheet of 25. So I thought that was very slick, very well done. And I'll also echo Councillor Overwater's sentiments. Is it possible for the town to take the reins and record our own recording? We wouldn't have any bias in doing that, but then at least we can get that information out if the Chamber of Commerce decides not to. Thanks.
CEO Williams.
Yes, thank you. And through you, Madam Chair, I'll take that one. So absolutely, it is. As you all know, the Chamber of Commerce was the sole organizer of the Canada Forum and has been, I believe, for quite a number of years. Should council wish, we'll reapproach election planning in 3 years' time. Don't want to get the cart before the horse too far. But I would figure with rentals and technology, it'd probably be a $5,000 touch in today's dollars based on what I know of such rental equipment and rental fee space. But we can certainly take that on if council believes it's better left to us to ensure the information is out there in many mediums as possible. So.
Thank you, CEO Williams. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you to the Legislative Clerk, just a quick question. Is there any means, vehicle, method whereby the province is collecting and aggregating feedback from all 480 municipalities or whatever it is around the election process? Or is it basically just stop and we're right here? Thank you.
Thank you, through the chair. We normally get a survey, usually a couple months after, from Alberta Municipal Affairs. I haven't seen that yet, and I don't think you've seen it yet, have you? Oh, but Alberta Municipalities has sent one out, and I did fill in those concerns into that and sent it in. But I do, normally Alberta Municipal Affairs also sends out a survey.
And I can add to that, and through you, Chair. The Local Authorities Election Act, after every 4 years, it is mandated, it undertakes a review. So that review will occur beginning in 2026, and there ought to be opportunities for feedback. Should be opportunities for feedback, but we'll see how the current government sees fit to engage on that. But generally, yes, they do take stock after every election.
Thank you for that information. Any further questions or comments for our returning officer? Okay, seeing none, I will take this opportunity to thank you, Marcy, and your team. I did hear very many compliments, and although we didn't hear any news until the wee hours of the morning, which made it for a very long night for everyone included, volunteers and workers and candidates, overall, I've heard very many complimentary things about how the election was handled and how professional that your workers were, and courteous to all of the people who did get out to vote. So thank you for that. I will now ask for the question. If someone could please make Councillor Krush.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Blatz. I move that the committee accept the 2025 election wrap-up for information as presented.
Thank you for that. I will now call a question. All those in favor? That motion is carried unanimously. Thank you so much. We will now move along to our anticipated item 4C, our 2026 capital and operating budgets information session. So I will turn it over to you, C.L. Williams, to introduce, I'm sure it must be Director Linderman, who will be assisting you in this presentation.
That's a very good guess, Deputy Mayor, and correct. Sheena's going to lead us through this one and answer all your questions and make all your concerns go away. Sheena, no pressure.
Wow. We'll see what we can do here. Just moving on to the first slide here. So going through our timeline again, we had 5 meetings set up. We are now into our 4th one with the hopes that at the end of today we'll have something I can bring back on December 8th for final approval. I'll start first in the operating budget. So a couple of changes were made since we last met last week to our base budget. We were able to reduce our deficit from $355,000 down to $289,000 that you see today. These reductions were made to various accounts throughout the organization. I do think at this point, though, we are as slim as we can be in that base budget. And then on the utility side, 2 changes were made. We did receive notice on Thursday that the Water Commission was increasing its rates by 15%, not 15 cents. That's what we had originally anticipated. So that rate increase from the Water Commission is actually 33 cents per cubic meter. Along with this, we then looked closer at all of our consumption projections that we were putting in through water and wastewater. And we were able, within wastewater, to reduce with confidence based on the last 2 bills we've received from the Wastewater Commission, and find an approximately $140,000 that we could reduce our payment to the Wastewater Commission. So you will see that in our rates, when we go to that section, wastewater is going down within the base budget. Oh, and there we are. We are here. So these are the new base budget utility rates based on both that Water Commission increase and then that reduction in wastewater. So you'll see the waste water base rate is increasing to $1.22. That hasn't changed since I last presented. And then our water consumption rate, we were able to absorb some of that increase. So we've only increased our per cubic rate by 17 cents. So that means the average residential property will increase by $1.70 based on 10 cubic meters. And then within wastewater, we were able to reduce our flat rate by 60 cents and then reduce our consumption rate by 10 cents, showing a savings of $1.60 in wastewater. So that is a monthly increase overall to the average residential home of $1.32. And again, this is just the base budget. No projects have been added into those rates. Moving on, council had asked for a little bit more information on COLA at our last session. So here we've provided you with some comparisons from other municipalities. Most of these are what is being brought forward to their councils for discussion and have not formally been approved yet. So the average that we're seeing is 2.19%. And then we've also included on this slide our COLA impacts at the various percentages. So I've provided you with a 1%, a 1.5, a 2%, and then the 2.14% that we use as our COLA projection. Moving on to our options. So we've provided council with two options. The first option you will see here is what council had supported at our last meeting when the operating projects were presented. So these total projects totaled $481,715, and they include COLA at the 2.14%, the new FTE funding at $86,500, service level costing at $50,000, the public service employee at $66,000, alley program $30,000, the pathway repairs and maintenance increase at $40,000, and 3 summer staff at $48,000. Moving then to what this looks like when we look at tax increase then. So this would be, I'm just gonna find a different sheet here. A 6.5% tax revenue increase. So that is $770,000. Looking at what this would look like, on the screen, you'll see the tax rates are actually going down. Again, that is because we are anticipating our assessments are gonna increase more than that 6.5%. For the average homeowners, looking at just the municipal portion of their taxes, they would increase by $193 a year, or $16 a month. For your non-residential, the municipal portion is $537 or $44.75 a month. And then looking at utilities, this again is all the projects that council had supported during our conversations last week, for a total of $536,357. That includes, again, the COLA, the FTE funding, hydrant repair program, valve inspection and repair, and the water and wastewater repairs and maintenance increases. Looking at what that would look like for our utility rates, you see here that the base rate would increase by $2.39. Our consumption rate would increase by 62 cents a cubic meter. And then looking at wastewater, the base rate would increase by 46 cents, and then the consumption would still decrease, but now by 5 cents as opposed to the previous base rate. So a total monthly charge to average residential home of $8.55. Moving on, so we provided now with an option 2, and this is with administration going through and prioritizing all of those projects and providing council with that list. reasoning behind doing this. Obviously, prioritizing the requested items was based on 3 factors: our water loss and I&I, infrastructure renewal, and community safety. So the list that we're providing here for the tax supported, we have COLA at 1.5%. We have changed that new FTE funding down from 180,000 to 100,000, all tax supported. Reduced the ALI program to just do the assessment phase only, so going from 30,000 to 10,000. Reduced the trails repairs and maintenance ask from 40,000 to 10,000, and reduced the summer staff request from 3 down to 1 for 16,000. We did leave in the service level costing and the public service employee at their original ask. That is a total of $363,962. When we look at the property tax impact for this one, you're now at that 5% tax revenue increase that we try to maintain. And with that, we did include a transfer from the tax stabilization reserve of $60,000 for the 2 one-off items, that being the service level costing and the alley assessment. If we look again, our tax rates are decreasing. The average cost to a residential property, just the municipal portion, is $158 or $13.17 a month. And then non-residential is down to $411 or $34.25 a month. Moving to the utilities supported projects, we have reduced the hydrant repair program down to $50,000, reduced the valve inspection and repair program to $100,000, and maintained the water and wastewater repairs and maintenance increases. So that is removing that FTE that was in here for a total increase of $280,578. And looking at what our utility rates look like with that, the base rate for water is going up $1.43. Your water consumption rate then is going up 44 cents a cubic meter. Your wastewater base rate is going up 45 cents, and the consumption going up 11 cents for a total of $6.48 a month for the average residential home. I know that was a lot all at once, and we will come back to all of this. But for now, I will turn it over to CAO. Oh, so I'm sorry. I'm ahead of myself. We're going to run through capital now because I haven't boggled you enough with numbers yet. Okay, so looking at capital, we started our capital discussions last week at $3.4 million approximately. Council, during our discussions, removed $127,000 worth of items, that being the material screen, the hot tub retile, outdoor rink equipment, and the outdoor rink ice resurface, for a total remaining of $3.4 million. How those items are funded, transfer from utilities, grants being the biggest contributor at $2 million, and then most importantly, the reserves draw would be $416,500. So that again is option 1. Option 2, we've gone through again and prioritized. So again, our starting point was $3.4 million. Council had removed the $127,000. We removed a further $353,500 for a total proposed budget of $2.9 million. This next screen shows the items that we have removed from there. So in addition to council's 4 items, we removed the LED lighting, and boiler replacement, thermal imaging camera at the fire hall, 54th Street crosswalk, the exterior stairs and hardwood decking at Sportsplex, and then the OR Hedges playground replacement and the Verde cutter from Sports Fields. Looking at how that looks now with our funding. So again, you have your same amounts within the transfer from utilities, and grants are about the same. It's that draw from reserves that has been reduced now to $224,000 coming from reserves. And with that, I will now pass it over to the CAO for a few items.
Thank you, Director Lindeman. And through the chair, only a couple slides left. So I just want to give some context to the option 2 scenario and related to the budget themes, goals, and what we're considering our initial stab at performance measurement for this budget, all of which before, and then talk about what's upcoming over the next 4 to 5 months. So option 2, it tries to balance the financial affordability lens with the needs of the organization. It doesn't meet some of the goals at this time in terms of revenue growth or reserve contributions in particular, but doesn't mean there's not cap. So when we talk spring budget adjustments, it's something that generally happens every year as we get a better picture of our assessment of capital projects, of legislation changes, of unexpected expenses or revenues, usually unexpected expenses. We have our 2025 surplus, which are projecting still in the black so far. Some of the capital items have a revenue sharing cost sharing component with Mountain View County, which is not yet factored in. We have some grants outstanding. We have potentially some assessment increases from growth happening, which we won't know until early March. And then the franchise fee discussion, which will be, based on today's discussion, brought back to December 8th. So a few items to run through. The land sale revenue. This is a topic I broached on briefly, but over the course of 2025, up until last week even, we've been disposing of surplus lands, and we have right now unofficially pending one more transaction closing around $500,000 of revenue the council has to allocate prior to our year-end closing. It's not the end of the month, you still have time, but for that $500,000, if we're doing the math on one of the budget goals was to keep our restricted reserves at par. We don't want to drain them, but we probably can add to them. Option 2 allows you to breathing room on that. That if we're projecting a $224,000 drawdown from reserves, there is a potential for us to replace that, to keep that budget goal of no net reserve drawdowns. Some other options we will present to you: debt repayment. Besides the OFL debenture, we also have other debt at higher interest coming off the books in the next 2 years. Sheena will run that through you in the coming weeks. Our Southeast Industrial Park obviously is in need of investment should we want to attract more industry there, but the problem with that, it's long-term in nature. It will not be recognized in the short term, and there's no guarantee it will be recognized. The investment will be recognized at all. General transfertive reserves is another option, and fund the 2026 budget in any way you see fit. Generally, I don't recommend funding operating in this regard, just because you should be supporting operating through your general revenue collection through taxation and utilities, but the capital piece, or any mixture of that. So council will see this coming forward in the near future, but discussion is welcome today. As Sheena mentioned, tax stabilization reserve, of which we keep, I think, 230,000 or so right now in the reserve. We generally don't touch this, or when we do, it's to lower mill rate costs. What we're proposing to council, there's 2 one-time operating expenses. Option 2 is balanced or presented using that stabilization reserve for those 2 projects there. So drawing down that reserve by $60,000. If council doesn't want to proceed with those projects, we remove the projects, the expense, and the revenue, or we fund them through general taxation. But it seems appropriate from our lens to at least have the conversation. So other projects that were removed, just to comment on those, for the fire hall upgrades, the boiler and the LED lights. Should we be successful with the 50% cost sharing grant, we would return in the spring to council to refund those projects at adjustment time. The alternative is this, you just fund them now, and it can be contingent on the grants, but 6 versus a dozen, half dozen. 2 summer students reduction. This is based on council agreeing to maintaining the current status quo with naturalization. So the naturalization areas we retreated on this year, they're roughly on a monthly mowing schedule, more or less. Adding 1, we think we can make do, as long as we're not expecting any increase in service levels. I'm not going to lie to you, this will be tight. Social needs assessment, I know I think that this one I booted, but there might be avenues for us to find other sources of funding. If we find those, we'll present it to council for reconsideration as well. But the 54th Street crosswalk lights, it is a relatively minor expense at $18,000, but again, we thought spring budget adjustments, once we have a better sense of our available capital, maybe the more appropriate time to have that conversation. And O'er Hedges Playground, same thing, taking away in option 2, but we will look for alternative funding and partnerships as per the playground replacement policy and bring those back to council should we find success. But some notes, option 2 again doesn't rebuild reserves, or doesn't get us to a point just yet where we're not drawing down from reserves, as mentioned, mainly through that land sale revenue and potentially through what we're seeing in spring budget adjustments. Once assessment in 2025 year end is known, we have the potential, but option 2 doesn't yet do that. 2027 capital projects, there is a lot coming down the pipe in 12 months' time. Just, you've seen the capital plans, just an FYI. And then funding asset management. This is generally the same thing as building reserves, but we see a persistent deficit in our existing fleet and heavy equipment, for example, that we're going to have to rectify eventually. So this option 2 doesn't quite tackle those head on. But option 1 perhaps goes a bit too far for council's liking at the moment. So either we discuss and meet in the middle, or council provides direction on what we'd like to see next Monday for final consideration. But with that, Deputy Mayor Blatz, I'll put it back to you. We recommend perhaps returning to the start of the presentation. That was a large data dump, and we can go through starting with operating and option 1 and option 2, if that sounds okay.
That sounds good. If we can start with that then, and then we can allow questions to go through those rather than jump all over the place. We can keep questions consistent and in somewhat of an orderly fashion is how I would prefer to see this done.
Sounds good. And Sheena will lead this, but I guess on the base operating budget, we did find further savings in administration, largely through our professional development side of the budget, which is not a great way to go, but we hope we are still able to meet the needs of the organization, and along with some strategic cutting here and there to try to get that total deficit down as low as possible. But as I think we've demonstrated over the last 6 weeks, there's not a lot of fat in the organization. So any questions on the base operating budget before we get into the options 1 and 2?
I don't see any at this time, so please proceed.
I guess one more thing on the base budget utilities. It was referenced in an email, but there's some misunderstanding with administration and the Water Commission that what we thought was a 13% rate increase was actually a 33-cent rate increase. So that's a substantial difference, which did affect our option 2 as well. So the base budget with that factored in is $1.32 on average monthly increase. And unfortunately, the Water Commission, just like a lot of municipalities, they're now finding the last 30 years of keeping rates cheap may not have been the best idea. That now we have to pay dearly for work that should have been done incrementally over the last several decades. So, lessons learned.
We're zoomed in. So I think we'll start our operating conversation around COLA, because that is one of the ones that is kind of still up in the air. I would just open it up to council for discussion on that.
Is there any questions or comments from council? Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through you to CAO. Williams, is it my understanding that administration, particularly looking at administration prioritizations, is that a 1.5% COLA is administration's recommendation?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, essentially, yes. I think to make it work, give a bit on that, to give a bit elsewhere. So yes, that's essentially our recommendation.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Krush.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through you to CAO. Piggybacking off of that comment, does that 1.5% keep us within the 50th percentile as outlined in our policy for paying town staff?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair, no, it does not. If council sticks with this policy, in 2 years' time, you'll be faced with a one-time funding to get back to the 50th percentile. So for reference sake, this year was $80,000 due to not keeping COLA near the, I guess CPI generally is what used elsewhere. About 2 years prior, it was $280,000. It was significantly more. So, but answer your questions, no, it does not.
Supplemental.
Supplemental, what percentage would we need to be at to reach that 50% goal?
Thank you. Through you, I believe right now it's trending at 2.19. I would say that 2.14, what was originally recommended, is probably reasonable. Generally, since half of these are probably just in front of councils right now, some of them will be adjusted generally downward. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for that information, but my concern is, having been faced a few years ago with a significant increase to COLA, I think it is something that council has to seriously consider on 2 points. I mean, we have to look to the future, and if we don't keep consistent and keep within our 50th percentile, we will end up paying at some point in time. And the other thing that I have a concern with working with minimal staff, we all know that we're already understaffed, and our staff are working very well, being very lean. My concern is if we don't keep within that 50th percentile, will we see staff turnover, especially within our area, if people do offer the 2% and their salaries are significantly or potentially higher than what we are paying? We could lose, hypothetically speaking, staff due to that. And we all know that to recruit new staff members and to do the training, onboarding, it comes at a cost. And it also comes at a slowdown in people who are up and running per se in their current job. The training period itself and can be a slowdown in productivity. So I just want to remind council of that when we're considering the COLA options today. None of us really like to say that we want to increase an awful lot, but I was leaning more to staying at 2% myself, but that was my thoughts just based on those reasons I gave you. Mayor Daley.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thanks for bringing this up, because I agree with you, as well as, the retention of our employees is definitely has a value to it. And as you mentioned, the cost of recruitment and the cost of bringing somebody on and educating and training and so forth. And so I would agree with you to stay within that 2%. I'm also thinking back of the of the time where we had to catch up on our COLA as well. And so I'm really hesitant to kick the can down the road on this particular topic, because if we then go back to our policy and want to stay with that 50% percentile for our staff members, it's going to be a catch-up game again. And so down the road, it can come back to haunt us. So I would agree with what you're saying as well. And then going along with that also, we heard very loud from our citizens in the past couple of years about the service levels, especially the ones that are, has to do with the parks and the utilities and so forth, of what was important to them as far as keeping the town presentable and in good shape. So I'd like us all to keep that in mind when we're talking about our personnel, and also the recruitment and retention of our personnel as well. Thank you.
Councillor Taylor and then Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Blatz. Yeah, I just want to echo a lot of those sentiments as well. I tried very hard in my day-to-day in business as being a man of my word, that if I'm going to be saying I'm going to be doing something, I've got to uphold that. And it's not only just a matter of pride and respect, really, for the people that I make deals with. It's also a matter of predictability. An organization or a person who says what they're going to do is predictable, and they're much more able to be dealt with and do business with. So I believe it's very important that if we say we need to be at 2.14%, then we are at 2.14%. And as Mayor Daley echoed as well, all these services, they begin with the staff. And if we don't have good staff, we don't have good services. So I feel this is, it might seem minor, but I do feel like that 0.14, that's important to me. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and I'm thinking most people maybe around the table know where I'm at, but I will state it anyway. I'm fine with 1.5%. You have to recognize these are two different tools that are available to council. The COLA is a bridge relative to inflation at a current point in time. The 50th percentile is a long-term tool, if you like. If we don't agree to something in the 2% area on COLA, doesn't mean we don't support the 50th percentile. We've acknowledged previously that we do the market comparisons. We can certainly play catch-up as part of the long-term competitiveness and to make sure we are competitive with neighboring municipalities. There's more to compensation or the compensation package than just pay, as we all know. But I would urge people to consider and look at the total picture. And inflation and COLA is one tool that we have. The 50th percentile is our policy, and we all agree that we want to be there. And we can be there over a period of time. And if we're talking 1 year's deferral here in terms of the COLA, 2.14% versus 1.5, it's not going to be, I don't think, a meaningful impact at the end of the day relative to the market adjustment, the 50th percentile adjustment. We also have to keep in mind as well the responsibility we have to the taxpayer. Trying to be balanced and fair to the staff. For sure, the staff are the front line. They're the boots on the ground. They are the people that are the front of the organization. But at the same time, we have to be very mindful of the physical responsibility we have to the taxpayers. And when we look at other neighboring municipalities, I don't know intimately their financial position, but we're starting in the hole of almost 300,000. I can't remember what the revised number is. We're starting in the hole. We're carrying the financial scars from ONET, which we're asking our taxpayers to bear for another 4 or 5 years. You have to roll that all up and take a look at the total picture and balance fairness to the staff with paying attention as well to what the taxpayers are being asked to bear. Not only from taxes, but we've acknowledged from water, from wastewater, from franchise fees. There's so many different fingers and hands in the taxpayer's pocket, which we all acknowledge there is only one. I'm just looking for some balance. Thank you.
Councillor Overwater.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Blatz. again, our policy states we're going to be in the 50 percentile. And I believe our staff, we want them to trust us. We want our community to trust us. And if our staff knows our policy at 50th percentile, and then we change randomly from one year to the next, then how are they going to trust us to lead them and to lead the community? So in my opinion, I mean, the 2.14 or the 2%, there's not much difference between the two. But I believe we have a policy that states 50th percentile. We want our staff to trust that we're going to follow our policy. Otherwise, how can we expect them to follow policies if we don't? So that's just my comment. I am good with the 2.14 because that's what our policy states.
Thank you for everyone's comments. Any further comments or, CO Williams, do we want to see some kind of a consensus as to what should come back on the 8th, or how do you want to proceed with this?
I believe at the end of operating discussions, we can, along with the decision papers, of which COLA is one, do that straw poll.
Okay, thank you very much for that. All right. Okay, so then I guess we will move along now to the next item. Director Linderman?
So I think we'll just go through the items one by one here and see where council's at with each item, unless you had questions on the tax impacts that I had provided. If you want to go there first.
Mayor Daley, do you have a question? Oh, okay. One thing I wondered when I read this, and I read it several times over the week, or yesterday, I guess. What impact does it if we leave our tax rate as it currently is? I realize that we wanted to stay within that 5%, which is what we had stated we were going to do a few years ago, but realistically, we're starting to recognize that that may not be the number we need to stay at. And I understand, I fully commend Councillor Wilson and his comments. He's very true in what he said. I mean, we're trying to balance here and walk a fine line between, the expectations and understanding the challenges that our taxpayers have in our community, but we also have to maintain certain amount of service level. And as Councillor Overwater said, perhaps trust in our staff and our residents. So is there some consideration maybe we need to start to look at that, and perhaps maybe we need to utilize our tax stabilization fund a little more than this year than not? But again, then next year we know we face more challenges, and the more we push off till future dates, the more challenges that we're just going to compound the ones we see today. And that's just my thoughts on it. So my question really is, what happens if we leave our tax rate as is?
So if the tax rate stays how it is right now, we are predicting that 11.5% increase to residential assessment. So that would just be purely, their increase would be 11.5%. So that looks at the municipal portion would be $272 increase for the average. And that's just the municipal portion. Non-residential is increasing approximately 9.6%. And so for them, it would be approximately $812 increase to the municipal portion. But again, that is something, should council want to, for now, not decide on that portion of it, look at your projects, look at what you're comfortable approving, and then we bring this discussion back again in April when the assessment's in, and then we figure out how you want to fund that.
Okay, thank you for that. That was going to be the next part of my question, so I appreciate that information. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and I'm not sure what I'm commenting to here other than the general budget. But I think the CAO painted the canvas fairly well in the latter comments. Again, when I look at what we're forecasting potentially to spend in tax increases, and acknowledging we are in an infrastructure deficit position, as just about every municipality in this province is and elsewhere, we're a town that really hasn't grown. And if I say that in the context of our assessments, our assessment value, Driven and Mr. Clark from the consulting agency a year ago or in the summer identified that. 25% growth, at least in our residential assessment, primarily through inflationary pressure. Very little. I think we've generally averaged about 1% increase in actual growth. So we're a town that isn't growing. So again, when I look at that, I say we got to be very judicious about how and where we're spending our dollars. I've referenced before, and I think the CAO started to paint that picture. We do know and acknowledge we've got a few great projects coming on board, residentially anyway, in terms of the apartments, in terms of the eightplex, in terms of Stoutenburg building. Those are certainly going to improve, to a fairly good extent, our tax revenue position. I'm all for, certainly, let's take a wait and see with some of the spend. I think as the CAO and as Director Linderman indicated in their presentation, see what happens in the spring. But as well, we have to be very pencils sharpened, which I always ask our delegations, around how and where we're spending our money, because we aren't a growing town. And we all acknowledge that we need mid to large size commercial and we need mid to large size industrial to supplement what we've been doing residentially. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Are there any further? Oh, Mayor Daley.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And through you to Director Linderman, could you give me those numbers again if our tax rate stayed at the 5.8 and the 8.8 for non-residential?
So, again, I just want to say that it is just preliminary. These are
Exactly,
not set
yeah.
in stone. The residential increase for municipal would be $272 or 11.6%. And the non-res municipal would be $812.
And that is at, what percent would that be? That would be
9.6%.
9.6%. Okay. And that is under an assumption that the assessment will come in somewhere around 10% increase from last year.
Correct.
Okay, good. Thank you for that.
CO Williams.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So, and we can come back to the larger picture at the end of the conversation, but skipping over COLA now, this is option 2 in front of you. I think it's probably more efficient if council goes through the proposed adjustments and based on, because our option 1 was council's preferences, option 2 is presenting that leaner approach, basically. And it's on council at budget. So with the new FTE funding, which bridges both tax supported and utility supported, this is proposing reducing or eliminating the utility supported position, which was going to be directed towards our utilities department, providing $100,000 in new FTE funding, which will largely go to support corporate services. And if, again, how that overall dollar amount works out, it's more in my court to try to meet those needs with the reduced budget. So any comments, questions, concerns with option 2's proposal to reduce essentially the 2 staffing positions to 1 and a bit?
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Well, certainly, yeah. I like the direction we're going relative to, again, running lean on an already lean organization. When you say the position most likely would tend now towards corp services versus what I'll call boots on the ground in the field and utility, obviously I'll leave it to your expertise and professional judgment to deem that's the most desired place for that position. But what does that mean if we give up the utility position then, as far as service level? We certainly are all conscious of that. What does that mean? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Through you, Deputy Mayor. Very good question, because I still believe that the utility addition is needed. Like, it's not just the need disappeared in the last 7 days. This very much is an option for council consideration, should you want to lower that tax and utility rate impact onto the residents and ratepayers. What this means, again, is a new way of introducing staffing that I do have the ability to make those dollars work for the organization as best I think they can if the staffing number is approved. But also the boots on the ground versus the boots in the office. To me, they're the same thing, that we need a productive finance and human resources and IT and administrative functions to operate the municipality. Those are usually the ones that get critiqued wherever local government employees get critiqued. But I don't think from a utilities service delivery, it will negatively affect our. What we're trying to do is be more proactive in tackling our water loss in I&I, and we felt that a position increase would certainly help that. Now, what is in the utility supported side, which I can jump there right now, we did keep the water and wastewater repairs and maintenance at the same because based on Director Pedro's recommendation, those were more important than an increased staffing position because we dig 30 to 40 holes a year in the streets, and based on which he presented, what we call our CCTV footage from the sanitary, there's 70 identified points that we have to dig up. We know that already. That's going to take 4 to 5 years. The valve inspection and hydrant repair program, for example, even though contracted, they'll give us a higher sense of the capacity we're missing internally. So the utility position will be brought before you if it's not approved today, certainly next year again, with certainly much more data on why it's needed as well, as we better understand the plight of our underground infrastructure. But I think for now, the $100,000 ask is, generally speaking, to service the staffing needs of the organization.
Thank you, CEO Williams. Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Blatz. I believe what we're hearing from administration right now is the opportunity to create the most efficient way to be spending these money. There is certainly economies of scale when we're spending these kind of dollars. And so through you to CAO Williams, is it my understanding that this second option 2, would be the most efficient use of our dollars for this budget as presented?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Cook, essentially yes. I do believe that the value, if you take away the utilities function, I'm confident that's where I need to make a quantifiable improvement to the organization's staffing structure. Now, how it helps me having this flexibility, we think in terms of FTEs. I would argue the economy is changing on both sides of the employer and employee relationships, where the flexibility gives me the chance to look at 0.3s and 0.5s and 0.8s. And so you're trying to make the most efficient use of your dollars. I'm not saying we won't hire a full FTE. I'm just saying until we have a better sense of the need, but also the ability to meet the needs and the options, I think this gives me what I need for that.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Again, I'm not sure if we're sequentially just following in order, and if we are, somebody can slap me on the side of the head. But I have just a question around the alley program. And so we've reduced that to just 10,000 from the 30, I think, original ask. I guess, as we said before in our previous budget meetings, heard in spades, loud and clear, for not just 1 year, for a couple years, back alley maintenance. What can the taxpayer, the citizens, the residents, expect in terms of back alley maintenance with this 10,000 assessment only? Because we're still going to be able to do triage, prioritize some core back alley maintenance repair as we do right now, right? The phone rings from a resident or an REP, our operations guys are quick to respond and grade it, backfill it, whatever. Like, what are we going to look at and look like in terms of back alley repair and maintenance going forward? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Through the chair, I was getting to that. But so the alley program, again, the 10,000 in option 2 is proposed to fund one time out of this tax stabilization reserve. It doesn't mean we're going to forego maintenance in alleys. This 10,000 was the assessment piece, which may be able to be done internally outside of perhaps the places where some engineering work's required. But on the operational level, similar to what I explained with our snow clearing service level, which is one of the main messages of the 2026 budget survey, we believe there's internal improvements to be made here. The biggest one, for instance, a year ago, I would have told you we have one employee who knows how to run the grader. That's the machinery you need to grade the alleys, essentially. Now we have 3. So that right there gives us just more tools in the toolbox. So where this is coming from, if we don't spend the $10,000, we can buy gravel with it, for example. But just having the ability, which of investing in training and professional development, that's the back end. That's the output of investing in staff, is you get more abilities and tools in them. And it's just tough to always explain the dollar impact on that. So just like snow clearing, I'm confident that through Director Pedro and the great team he has, we will be able to show tangible benefit, improvement in our alley maintenance program just through the internal training and job sharing, cross-training, et cetera, that we've experienced in the last 8 months, essentially. That being said, we know our alleys are going to need more gravel and in some cases some redraining, I guess to call it that.
Thank you for that. Is there any further questions at this time? Mayor Daley.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through you to the CAO. Going back to back alleys and maintenance programs and stuff, correct me if I'm wrong, but do we not still have 30 or 40,000 in the original budget for maintenance on back alleys as well?
Yeah. And through you, Mrs. Chair, it's not separated. So we don't have a dedicated line item. This is what this would create. So this $10,000 assessment, if we're able to do it either in-house or contracted, that's the idea that we would then present you with what we think the deficit in back alleys and then start to chip away like we're doing with, you've seen with our paving program or sewer relining program the last few years. But right now it's not a separate item, so we don't have a great understanding of what the spend is versus, or what the need is.
Supplemental, Mayor Daley.
So to go along with that line of thought then, there is some real problem areas within town now. There's probably half a dozen that I've heard about alone from citizens. Is there any way that those areas could be directed service to them to finish them up? One of the big ones, of course, is drainage and draining into people's yards and creating hassles behind people's garages and all sorts of stuff, right? So I'm just concerned about this because this is one thing that came up during our coffee with councillors, is the condition that our back alleys are getting into, and in particular, some spots that are getting worse than others.
Thank you, and through the chair. The short answer, yes. Like, we'll prioritize all repairs as we can. You're right, though. Some of the drainage issues are much larger repairs, which would have to almost be their own construction project in some cases. But I believe those are very few and far between. What this assessment will allow us to do is to do, of course, a physical inspection. And if we have to, as we call, shoot the grade, we'll do that. But even as simple as helping to ascertain the amount of gravel per ton is required in certain back alleys and bring council back that report on what we think that deficit is, along with the prioritization of the worst spots. Citizens have been great this past season with letting us know the problem alleys through Report a Problem. Using that data as well, I think we'll get a pretty good sense of which ones cause the most consternation. We do have a bit of bit of issues too, because some of the back alleys, especially in the downtown core, are asphalted, which adds both expense and a little more investigation on the substructure required. But I do believe the assessment will prioritize and give council a clear picture on that investment required. But again, I don't want to discount what I believe will be the improved maintenance standards just through having more operators trained on the equipment to do the work.
Thank you for that. Okay. Oh, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And I have, if I'm allowed, 2 questions for myself on this. And I'm sorry to take us back in the time warp to previous week. But one question around the summer student and the reduction from 3 to 1. And I think the reference in the presentation package was we maintain our current naturalization plan. Could you just elaborate on, for me, what the current plan is? Because we've kind of reset and recalibrated it a wee bit. We have some naturalized areas, we've retrenched or regrouped on others. But at the same time, much like the back alley scenario, we have heard in spades from residents throughout the town, the pride in the community, the beautiful, for lack of a better word, the beautification. So for a 1 student incremental, what is that going to mean and look like for islands in the Sherwood Crescent area and the Imperial in Harrison? What's that going to look like for maintaining those spots? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. And through the chair, I don't have the list of where it ended up. Will be a service level conversation in the coming winter months for council. But essentially, it's where we left off would be late August, early September. So, for example, Sherwood Crescent was put back on the list, like the other cul-de-sac islands, as we call them. Imperial was made a hybrid, for instance, so that's proposed to stay status quo. The 56th Street green space, for instance, was put on a once a month mowing schedule. So that's where I'm projecting with 1 summer staff, we'll try to meet that. Again, the problem is, this is the one I feel the least confident in saying we're going to meet it because, I mean, we have fewer people mowing the grass than we did 5 years ago when we had fewer things to do. So, in addition to the shrub bed replacement, I think that is important as well because that will save us time in the coming years as we're able to chip away at the 138 still in inventory, I believe, that require some level of care. But I think status quo, adding 1, we'll try our best to meet where the service level was left off this summer, and council will get a chance to set that service level in the next, I would say, month or so, give or take. And again, if council wishes to up that service level in the spring, you'll have another opportunity to revisit this project as well and at the staffing level.
Okay, before we move to Councillor Wilson, so then going back to this summer student, because I would be more comfortable with at least 2 summer students, recognizing that it is a cost, but they are still some of our cheapest, I guess is the best way to describe it, labor that we have. And granted, I understand that unless we get returning summer students, then there's always the training period, and there's it takes a while for onboarding. But I think that that's one of those things, and I understand that this will come to a service level discussion, but I mean, if we have it within the next month, that's great. If we can come back with some type of recommendation that we're going to need to look at it. But if we don't bring spring budget adjustments back until April, then we're under the gun to try and hire another summer student very quickly. And I think that I would rather see us look at least 2 for now. And if we're lucky enough to add an additional 1 and can hire 1 by the first part of May, after budget adjustments, so be it. But I think that's something I would like to see us look at and have come back. I don't know how the rest of council feels about this, but knowing the discussions we had over naturalization last summer, that involved not only all council, but also most of our staff. I think that that's something we should really look at and have full consideration of prior to service level and spring adjustments. Those are just my comments. Counselor Wilson.
Thank you, Mary Dahl. And I generally concur with your comment there, certainly around this seasonal employee. Sorry? Oh, Deputy Mayor, sorry. Yeah, I concur with your comments, certainly. And again, so I'm looking for trade-offs here. And perhaps I've just further convinced myself of a 1.5% COLA rather than 2 or 2.14, but we've moved on from that discussion, at least for now. But my other question, and maybe it's more so for council similarly, is we have the PSE position in there for the $66,000. Are we saying essentially that is an untouchable? Because if you can make some magic around that position there, that potentially could free up, well, $66,000 or, excuse me, or some portion thereof. But are we all agreeing? And I don't want to rewind the clock, but are we all saying that PSE is untouchable? Thank you.
Counselor Overwater and then Mayor Daley.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Blatz. The 66 for the PSE, again, can that not be another ICC discussion to really push the, they need to help out with that position for helping the RCMP to stay boots on the ground versus 8 hours typing at a computer, typing up reports? Because it also includes servicing their area, right? So is that an ICC discussion that can be, whoever's on ICC can bring that up?
CO Williams.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through you, of course, we will bring it up just as we brought up the community resource officer position, the crime reduction position, but there's no mechanism that would force any municipality in the RCM Earl Olds detachment area to share that. Now, obviously, council can touch any item in the budget it wishes. So the reason this was left as is in here, outside of the reports that most of you have seen from the RCMP on the capacity issues, in addition to the budget 2026 survey where community safety was one of the top 2 priorities, it seems that this checks a lot of boxes as we start to chip away at the again the deficit in our RCMP detachment. We know that we are under the regular member pool recommendation numbers, like officers to citizen. We know that we're under the PSE to officer contingent as well. We're having progress, in our crime severity index, not seeing major issues, but my recommendation to you is this is an investment in an outcome that you really want to see achieved, which is a capable, responsive police department. That we haven't had the displeasure of seeing the crime issues a lot of communities have, and adding this capacity and proactivity was at least my reasoning for keeping that in there as certainly one of my top priorities to recommend to you. So, but again, it's council's decision. I believe this one does have a lot of backing, both from the citizenry and from the data.
Thank you, CO Williams. Counselor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And yeah, just I raised it, but again, the CAO's comments prompted me. I did have a by chance chit chat with, I think it's Constable Gabriel on the weekend there, and he just started talking to me about all the desk time he's going to be expected to put in, partly coming from the weather conditions we had in responding to various motor vehicle incidents and everything. But he certainly went on indicating the amount of desk time that's going to take away from him being out on the street. So I acknowledge the CAO's comments there from an efficiency perspective and policing in general. Thanks.
Thank you, Counselor Wilson. Mayor Daley.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Blatz. And through you, in response to Councillor Wilson's comments as far as his interaction with Officer Gabriel, probably, was he catching you at a stop sign again, Councillor Wilson, or was it unofficial business? I was just going to mention the same as, on the same lines as CEO Williams, is that I think this is money well spent, and that we can invest our money more effectively than into this position, so that we can allow those officers to get out and do what they're supposed to be doing, and get them away from the desk, as Councillor Wilson also attributed to with his conversation with the officers. So is it untouchable? No, but is it worth it? Yes. I agree 100% on this one, so.
Okay, thank you for that. Moving along then, any further comments on these? Okay, I'll let Director Lindeman and CO Williams move along then, please.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So before we move on, perhaps we revisit, straw poll, whatever you wish, these operating tax supported projects. So with the one summer staff, is there consensus on one? Funding one position?
I'm good with option 1, option 2 as is. That's simplified.
Then- Okay, so summer staff only saw 3 hands up for one position, 2 positions. Is majority there? Okay. Pathway R&M increase, again, I think we asked for 40. There's already 40 in the budget, so this will add 50. Is everyone okay with just 10? Yep, yep. Alley program, as discussed. Okay, good. The public service employee at the RCMP station. Okay. Again, service level costing, just like the alley program, taken from tax stabilization. I guess that's the caveat. Are you comfortable that that project needs to proceed enough to warrant dipping into our reserve funds? That one's for service level costing, so essentially trying to tie what we do with how we spend. So in my budget introduction, I introduced that I can't tell you how much snow clearing or grass mowing or swimming lessons costs us if it's not contracted services with an invoice. That part's really easy. Trying to tie our service activities to our budget to give council and our asset management program a leg up on them. So. But it's proposing an option 2, just like the alley program, to dip into that 235,000 stabilization reserve. Any issues with that? Okay. New FTE funding, the $100,000 projection option 2. Is council agrees with that? Yay? Yay? Yeah. Okay. And COLA. So I'll do show of hands for the 1.5%, and the 2.14%. Good. So Councillor Taylor and Councillor Overwater is 2%. A friendly amendment of that?
What's the difference between 2 and 2.14? It can't be substantial. Well, there you go. Like, really? That's so much different.
Yeah. So, 2% agreeable? No? No? Oh, a stalemate. I like it. So, maybe just show of hands high for 2%. If okay, that's carried. Okay. Okay, on to utilities. So, we'll deduct COLA off the list. The hydrant repair program was reduced from 150 to 50, which, again, I do believe we are making progress in not just identifying, but rectifying that. Director Pedro did report that we have Director Andrew reported, I believe, we have no hydrants out of service right now. We're able to rectify the most immediate needs to make them working in 2025, but we do need to invest in this program.
And just for clarification point on this, because I think this is vitally important to the community and for a number of reasons, very obvious reasons. But, so will this be something that we will look at every year, and this will be a further discussion? It can be coming forward, and perhaps more importantly, it will come forward if funds allow for spring budget adjustments.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. So I believe the $50,000, in addition to what we already budget for hydrant maintenance, will allow us to see how far it goes. 150,000 was an estimate, and we think based on the progress we're seeing this year, we can tackle our most pressing needs with incremental investments like this.
Thank you.
Okay, the valve inspection and repair program, that was reduced just by 50,000 to 100,000. It's something that gives me anxiety personally, starting to turn valves that haven't been turned in several decades. But I think if we take it slower and predict perhaps a higher failure rate, it would ease that said anxiety. But $100,000 to start the program, contracted, but perhaps a little more conservative on the rollout. But I might be proven wrong and things might be in good shape. But any questions on the reduction to the valve inspection and repair?
Mayor Daley.
Thank you,
Or
Deputy.
Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Blatz. With this one here, this one gives me a little bit of anxiety as well, because we heard the urgency from Director Pedro when he presented this. And this goes back to a trust issue that we have with our citizens, as well as our maintenance procedures are at risk as well when we don't have valves that operate correctly. And so in this process or procedure of doing these, is there, as they inspect them, they can repair them if they're in an emergency type situation, or is it, do they do the inspection on the whole system then have to go back again? I'm just for the triage part is what I'm worried about, or gives me anxiety, that we do the worst ones first and get them out of the way so that we can then work towards a better system.
Good question. And through the chair, so to your first part, no, we will repair as we go. We don't want to find out something's broken and move on. So, and that's why it will be more conservative in that we're expecting, if we're expecting a 5% failure rate, we'll probably expand that to maybe a 15% and then inspect it on a lower threshold. But this is, and the reason why it was reduced, and even why I didn't, as CAO, bring it to council last budget cycle when Director Pedro first proposed it. It is very proactive. Like, we know there's valves that don't work, and as long as they're stuck open, they're not causing us any issues, right? Yeah. So we're going to go looking for this problem. Now, the reason it's coming forward this year, one of the larger breaks we had in town, we did indeed find one of these issues where we had to do an insert valve, essentially, as Director Pedro explained. So now is the time to start switching to a more proactive stance gradually. I think $100,000 will both let us start the program, but also give us a sense of that failure rate, as we're calling it in the valve program. But no, we won't get ahead of ourselves where all of a sudden we have turned 1,000 valves and we have 300 repairs at whatever, thousands of dollars per. We will do it incrementally and fix as we go.
Thank you for that.
And then and this ties into everything else: water R&M and wastewater R&M. An increase in base budget. We're seeing even in 25, we're already exceeding numbers or water R&M. Repairs upcoming. I think we had a dig today even, and we have a couple more happening, I believe, next week. So we're going to blow through this number regardless. So we might as well budget for it. But this ties into things like valve inspections as well, that if needed, we could utilize funding across the board. But Director Pedro believes these two items in particular are the most needed from his side. So no changes there from option one. Okay. So, sounds like consensus on option 2 for utility supported projects? Okay. Rates. So on the capital conversation, so council removed $127,000 worth of projects, which again is essentially option 1 to go with this. I didn't name it that. But should council wish to see that reserve drawdown be minimized in, as you pass budget 2026, the options were administration went in and triaged an additional $353,000 from the budget and removed these items. As I mentioned in the final part of the introduction, some of these will come back, like if grant funding is successful, if we're able to find partnership and significant cost offset, like through grants for the playground replacement, and pending a positive 2026 outlook in the spring, things like the 54th Street crosswalk will come back as well for consideration. But I guess what I'm asking council now, from this list that administration took out, is there anything you would like to put back, or would you like to just to proceed with option 1 as council directed last week?
Councillor Overwater, and then I have a comment. Oh, just the LED lighting, would we do any, is there anything through FCM or anything that's a green initiative? Because isn't that considered that type of grant funding because it's supposed to reduce your overall costs and find efficiencies? So is there something, is that included in some of the grants that we would be looking at?
Yes, so the grant we are looking at is through the Municipal Climate Action Center or whatever, and they would cover 50% of the cost. So if that is successful, we would bring that back.
Perfect, thank you for that. Councillor Overwater and then Mayor Daley. Well, then Councillor Taylor and Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Blatz. The boiler, is that the boiler at the fire hall again? Is that sort of not essential? Like, is that thing ready to explode on us, or how is that?
Yeah, so that is also in the same grant as well. So it will be brought back, but I don't believe it's critical right now. We just having issues with it. But if the grant is successful, it is for both the LED and the boiler. It'll be brought back to council. Yeah.
Mayor Daley.
I'm good, thank you. My question was just answered, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Taylor.
As was mine. You don't mess with water, so that's why I wanted to, I mean, it's the boiler, not overwater. I just wanted to make sure that's the one that stuck out like a sore thumb to me that really ought to be funded. Those efficiencies in there as well, having the immediate hot water, so that just seemed like an odd choice to remove off the board. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And just 1 or 2 comments. I'm certainly fine with option 2 and the removal of the 481,000 in projects. I got to admit, I was surprised the Verde cutter made the first cut. Maybe it was just me that didn't support that capital spend, but now that it's part of option 2, but I was surprised it made the first cut, because that's the machine for the Rotary Field, the elite playground or play fields that we have. So I'm fine with it being in 2. The only one that gives me, well, everything here gives me heartache for sure, but just the 54th Street crosswalk. I know I had residents, again, from previous coffee with council sessions and so on, expressing concern about that crosswalk that we've previously talked that leads from the residential in through that green space and into the elementary school. So I guess, yeah, pull it, and then depending on how our results turn out and assessment growth and everything else, perhaps it can find its way back in, if not later this year or for 2026, for 2027. But otherwise, I'm fine with the list as it is for option 2.
Councillor Cook, sorry.
Deputy Mayor Blatz, This is to administration. This is just a clarifying question. Obviously, we have some of these line items that we're expecting grant funding through, but it's not going to be 100% grant funded. Will we be setting aside the funds that we would expect that the town would be paying for our side of the grant funded projects to be part of this budget so that it's already in the budget if we do get the grants and we proceed with the funding of these projects?
So those two, the LED lighting and the boiler replacement, were already coming from reserves. So if we do get the grant, what we would do is just come back to council for a motion to take that money from reserves to fund those projects.
Anything further? All right. Continue, please.
Okay, so that's direction on the budget essentially. Again, we'll send council a summary of today with adjusted impacts projected on tax, utilities, reserves for consideration obviously next week when we hope to pass the final budget. Again, and not just because this is this council's first budget, but it is worth noting we even though we're going to pass the budget this year and it's going to be implemented starting January 1st, there is still opportunity to have an effect, and we generally happens every spring. Last spring was maybe the one exception because we didn't have a large capital program that was open to interpretation. Everything was pretty much spent and spoken for, but there's other opportunities. Some conversations upcoming will be this land sale revenue. Right now, where I think administration's recommendation is leaning towards is splitting it towards debt repayment and perhaps some either reserve transfers or capital improvements as well. But you'll get more information on that certainly as we finalize the outstanding transaction that's before us. Tax stabilization reserve, we'll report on this on Monday just so you get a clear picture. There's also a policy attached to that as well, I believe, where we do fund this reserve with any surpluses before council gets to adjudicate on directing previous year surpluses. And then, as mentioned, we'll report largely back on these, and if not Monday, then service level conversations in early 2026 it's looking, and with spring budget adjustments. But that's about it. Any final comments from council on what you've seen today, and suggestions, ideas, or what you want to see on Monday for final consideration?
Mayor Daley and Councillor Cook.
Deputy Mayor Blatz, and through you to CAO Williams, thank you for the information today, and thanks for your team for putting all this together. Option 1, option 2, option 23, whatever it is. I'm just question if we could get a recap on the amounts in the reserves as they stand now, just to give our councillors a kind of a snapshot of what they look like now and what they will look like maybe after our deliberation on this budget as well. That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Mayor Daley. Councillor Cook, and then Councillor Overwater.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Blatz. And I know we aren't supposed to be looking at this from a backwards view of the mill rate, but it sounded like Councillor Blatz had brought it up, Deputy Mayor Blatz had brought it up that we don't want to be going backwards for our mill rates, particularly for our long-term goals. Would it be possible to see what that would look like if we maintained the mill rates as they are and set that towards something like our highest rate debts to see what that would change for our amortization over the next years? If that could be presented alongside what we're going to be looking at on the 8th. I know I would appreciate that, and I would hope that some of the other council would appreciate that as well, as it seems like that is a high priority for our town at this time.
A. Williams.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through you, absolutely. Yeah, we I believe we have presented it in piecemeal, either the orientation or budget, but I believe getting a summarized version, but more strategic version of how DEC could relate to potential funding or increases in funding to get aggressive with repayment. We can certainly provide that. It may not be a conversation that gets solved on Monday, but just an example, this is, even if it takes us a while to get the information together, this is kind of the stuff administration likes to hear from council, like what information would help you make better decisions, maybe not today, but going forward. So thanks for that.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Cook. That was an excellent question. Councillor Overwater.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Blatz. I keep hearing administration and some of the previous council talking about keeping the tax rate below 6%. Can I get some reasoning behind that? I mean, we are 1.5%, 2% lower than our comparables on what our tax rate is. So I'm just wondering, like, what was your reasoning? What was your thought process on saying we're keeping it below 6%, basically?
Thank you, and through the chair, absolutely 100% my fault. So about 3 years ago, I made a projection to council that 5% increases for approximately 5 years would get us at our comparator group. I think we're probably lagging behind because people have also raised their taxes on a larger margin than I was expecting. We're starting to see that drop if 2026 headlines are any indication. We're seeing more closer to a 3 to 4% increase in comparator communities, but that comes from essentially my estimation in budget 2023, I believe, that said for 5 years, if we aim for 5% increase in tax revenue every year, at the end of 5 years, we will be in a much better position. So I think I still stand behind that claim. I should have done my arithmetic a bit more stronger, which is never one of my strengths, but I think that has been pushed a little further just because of other communities also recognizing they're in a large deficit. But that's where it essentially comes from, my recommendation to council at the time.
Thank you, CEO Williams. Any further questions or comments at this time? Okay, then on page 46, we do have a recommendation for council direction. Would someone like to make that? Councillor Overwater.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Blatz. I move that the committee accept the 2026 operating and capital budget discussion for information and direct administration to bring forward the matter to the next regular council meeting for final consideration.
I will call the question then. All in favor? Thank you. That is carried unanimously. I think that is our meeting for today, unless administration has any other information they'd like to discuss. All right, so I will adjourn this meeting at 3:17 p.m. Thank you all for your attending, and for those who attended virtually, have a great evening.